I am here with Emil Gallardo, the director and writer also?
Co-writer.
Co-writer
Yeah.
of 1, 2, 3, All Eyes on Me. Thank you so much for chatting with us today about the film. It's incredibly powerful, shocking, moving. I think I went through a whole range of emotions watching this film.
Yeah.
I know there's a dedication in the film. Who is the film dedicated to?
My mom. So my mom was a teacher for over 30 years. And I think just like a baseline level of respect came from watching her day in and day out and how much she invested into her classes and her students. So I dedicated it to her.
Was she a main inspiration for the story?
More as like just this, like I said, kind of this like grounding and respect for teachers and what they do. But the story was specifically inspired by a cell phone video that I had seen of this teacher in Mexico. And in that situation, the kids were really young, and there were gunmen like shooting at one another. Fortunately, in that situation, they weren't trying to harm the kids, but they were shooting at one another outside the class. And she asked them all to get on the ground. So the kids get on the ground, and then she starts saying to them, will you sing with me? And so then she starts singing and trying to engage them and calling them by name. And so she's getting them to sing. And as they're kind of singing together, you're still hearing this automatic gunfire happen right outside the window. And I was just blown away by her courage and her compassion and how she was not only trying to protect them physically, but also emotionally. And so I just wanted to write about a person like that in a situation like that and really bring the audience into the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you achieved your goal. It's really interesting. There's so many details in the film, and you see what a wonderful and caring teacher she is, the way she's individually reacting to each of the kids' needs before the panic sets in. Yeah. I even loved a little touch of like she's getting the supplies out of a little plastic shopping bag and the receipt is there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just quick, but I'm like, oh, she probably bought that stuff herself. Like there's a lot of detail in the film that's really wonderful.
Thank you.
You have, how many kids are in this film, and how did you approach working with them with such intense subject matter?
Mm-hmm. So we have 20 kids, 10 boys, 10 girls. That was our plan. Yeah, I could kind of go as deep as you want to go on all the things we did to work with them. 18 of the 20 had never acted before, and we knew that going into it. And so, we covered not only the basics of, please don't look into the lens, no matter how far you may be from the camera, but from like an emotional standpoint, I mean, it kind of started at the very beginning, even before auditions. So I made the entire script available to the parents, not just sides. And I said, before submitting your child for an audition, please read through the script in its entirety. If you're then comfortable, then please read it with your child. If you're then comfortable, then please, submit for an audition.
That's very smart. Very smart.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I did the same thing with the crew. I mean, I obviously had people that I really wanted to work with and have worked with in the past. And I said, hey, I'd love for you to come on in this role. But before you say yes, please read the script and make sure this is a project you want to participate in. And we did have both parents and kids and crew members all kind of opt out for a variety of reasons, most of which for the crew is like, I have a family member, or I used to be a teacher, or it just hit too close to home and they didn't feel like they had enough separation to be able to do their work. And then obviously for the parents, it was like, a lot of them said things to the effect of, I respect what you're trying to do. I just don't know if my child at 8 years old or 9 years old can handle all of this. Mm-hmm. And so that was fine. And that was why we kind of went through that process. But from there, I mean, the quickest way to kind of summarize it is just to say, we really prioritized building this atmosphere of psychological safety and vulnerability for everybody. And we would have group exercises that we would do at the start of each day with the entire cast and crew. And it was really important for me for the kids to see that the crew was willing to kind of be silly and be vulnerable and put themselves out there, so that they would understand we're all in this together. And just because, you know, your job might be to set up some lights or run some cable, it doesn't mean that I'm not also willing to put myself out there. And then there's been some misconceptions that I'm glad to clear up, but the kids were exposed to zero violence. There isn't actually any violence in the film. There's never anyone that you see get hurt. There's no blood. There's nothing like that. But the guys with the guns, that was filmed on a completely separate day. The kids were not even at the school at the same time. We didn't have them hearing like gunshots or anything like that. So they are very much acting, and that is like kudos to them. Yeah, and then we would even do stuff where we would cycle in groups of parents onto the set. We usually do that in like groups of 3, and then we'd have a separate monitor outside in the hallway, and the rest of the parents could watch, and then we would like rotate them. So the parents were a key part of this. They, to this day, like a year later, have been extremely supportive and encouraging. And we had like a local premiere here in Oakland, and we sold out like a 200-seat theater. And
wow.
And they continue to watch all the screenings at the festivals, and so it's been tremendous. A total team effort.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's amazing. I mean, just the fact that you had so much involvement, and also the fact that people passed on the project because they felt it was somewhat too close to home. To me, that speaks to the timeliness of it and the relevance. You know, if people are having that much of a reaction just to the idea of being involved, then it's probably a story that really needs to be told.
Yeah. And
so then to elaborate though, so all the gunshots and things like that, that was all added in post, the sound effects and stuff?
Yeah. So the guy with the AR-15 who goes into the classroom, he's shooting blanks. So which I didn't know prior to doing this, but there's multiple blanks that vary in terms of intensity of the sound. And from a technical standpoint, I just knew that I needed a little peak in the waveform because we were going to replace that anyway. So those were the only actual gunshots like that. Everything else is a sound effect. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so the day that he was doing that, the kids weren't even there.
That's great. There's some really interesting stylistic choices in the visuals. Did you have any specific references that you were looking to create your style?
Yeah, I watched one of the scenes from City of God several times. I mean, I think the goal for Caroline and I, Caroline Harrison was our DP on this. The goal was to light it and shoot it in a way where the lights and the camera are not obstructing the performances. And when you have 20 kids and you get them in any emotional state, regardless of what that happens to be, if you then say, hey guys, we're gonna turn around, you have a little bit, and it's like 45 minutes, an hour, and so they can come back on set, that is not gonna work. To try to get the kids back to where they were 45 minutes beforehand. So we lit it and shot it in a way where the lighting was very flexible. We could shoot pretty much like 180 degrees before the light starts getting poor enough to not shoot from those angles. And I knew going in, I was going to sacrifice some beauty to have that situation. But I just felt like, okay, well, if the performances can carry it, then it's worth that trade-off.
Well, I think you get a real kind of verite style doing that.
Right.
It feels immersive. It doesn't feel so planned out or crafted. You're really just in it with these people.
Yeah, and that was the goal. I mean, even in choosing our aspect ratio, it was like we didn't want it to feel like a documentary. That was a little too far, but we also didn't want it to feel like the camera's locked down or it's moving on a track and everything is perfectly smooth and fluid and it feels kind of manufactured. We wanted to feel like you were in the classroom. And we had a couple shots on sticks, and then I ended up not putting them in the edit because they just didn't feel right. So it was pretty much all Caroline on an easy rig. She would also, like, at lunch, she would breastfeed her daughter. I mean, it's
wow.
yeah.
She's a rock star.
She totally is. At one point, she's on a little hoverboard with the easy rig, and like she just, I mean, that's what I mean. It was a total team effort to create everything that you saw.
That's incredible. Wow, kudos to her.
Yeah.
The ending is very powerful. How did you arrive to the decision for that to be the ending, and did you consider any other options?
No, we didn't really consider. I mean, we kind of felt the film was going to end like that, and that just came out of, you know, I wrote the film after interviewing a couple teachers, and I had, you know, listened to a lot of different 911 calls from real situations. And one of the points I wanted to make was, even for the people that physically survive, they're not okay. Like, this is extremely traumatic. And just because they don't get summarized in the news headline of like wounded or a casualty, doesn't mean that this didn't have a tremendous amount of trauma on everybody that was even close to this, family members, friends included. And so I very much wanted, it just felt like, out of respect for the people that have been in these situations, if the audience could watch a fictional film, and then when the movie's over, they could go to dinner and have drinks and have laughs and the movie's over and done with, that felt like that would be disrespectful and a disservice to the people that have really been in this situation. And it felt like they should kind of have this pit in their stomach. They should feel sick. It should linger, because it is like undeniably wrong. And I wanted it to feel that way. And I didn't want, you know, some people are like, well, why don't you just have like fade in some sirens or like a helicopter? And is it because you don't get off the hook, because it's not over. They're not okay. Whether they live or not is like kind of besides the point. They're not okay. None of these people are okay. This should not happen. So I wanted it to end with that feeling.
Well, yes, I definitely felt that gut punch for sure.
Yeah.
um, if any of our audience wants to continue following on your journey as a filmmaker, where can they reach out to you or follow you?
So Instagram is probably the place I'm most active. I have my personal account, which is Emil G80, and then my production company, which is Waterlight Films. And then waterlightfilms.com is my website, where I post all the screenings, the future projects I have coming, news. So those are probably the two best places.
Okay, great. Well, Emil, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah,
congratulations on the film, and best of luck going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.